for joining us for Thank you all for joining us for what will be an exciting discussion this afternoon, I'm sure. We'd like to welcome you to the latest Connecting Energy, Nature and People webinar series, which is focused on vegetation management and ecosystem accounting. Dive in, I'd like to say a few things about RGI. RGI is a long-standing player in the European energy transition ecosystem of actors. Many of you may have come across it before, joined some of our earlier webinars as well. And what you may know about us is that we act to promote fair, transparent, and sustainable grid development. We've got a combination of TSOs and also NGOs that are active members and participants in the work that we do. And we also have a number of other supporting members. And we are always looking for other members and actors that are interested and involved in this space to become engaged with us. Within RGI, I am part of the Global Initiative for Natural Grids and Renewables. Annika and Adrian are also part of the team. And as you can see here, it's a collaboration between RGI and IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And what we are looking to do is to support the just and sustainable energy transition by providing assessment tools to quantify contributions to nature and people-positive goals. There's more information on our website, the QR code, the URL. Please have a look, and I will also share some further information about GINGR and what we've published at the end of the webinar. Before I dive in and introduce our speakers, I'd just like to say a few words about what we're looking to cover today. This session will look to explore how grid operators can translate integrated vegetation management, IVM, an established best practice that enhances grid resilience, reduces costs, and supports biodiversity, into a language that policymakers, regulators, and governments can understand from an accounting and decision-making point of view. Across Europe, in particular, IVM is already widely implemented on the ground, but its full value often remains invisible in planning, regulation, and finance. The challenge, therefore, is to convert these operational practices into measurable and decision-relevant data. During this webinar, we're looking to provide some more detail on the work already being done in this area by DSOs and TSOs, in this case, in Portugal. And we're also looking to introduce the SEEA ecosystem accounting framework as a possible bridge between practice and policy, and also introduce GINGR as a project, its contribution to this area through its work on linear infrastructure. We'll be providing some practical examples, examples of spatial planning approaches, ecosystem indicators, and the speakers that we've got today will look to demonstrate how grid corridors can be understood not only as infrastructure, but also as assets, delivering biodiversity gains, community value, and system resilience. Without further ado, let me introduce you quickly to our speakers. First up, we have Dr. Inês Candido, who's an environmental senior manager at Iredes, electricity DSO in Portugal. She'll be sharing an overview of a biodiversity baseline and ecosystem services project that's been applied across more than 80,000 hectares in Portugal. After her, we have Sofia Vaz, who's an innovation director at the Natural Business Intelligence, today representing REN, the electricity TSO in Portugal. And she'll be sharing with us perspectives on how REN measures and represents ecosystem services and providing a case study example that illustrates the application of natural capital valuation. Next up, we have Professor Lars Hein, who's a professor of ecosystem services at Wageningen University in Holland and a leading expert in ecosystem services accounting. He'll provide an introduction to the SEEA framework as a system to organize and structure this type of information, responding to the growing interest of grid operators in measuring ecosystem services through biodiversity data. And then finally, we have Adrian Mate, who leads the technical working group focused on linear infrastructure at GINGR. He'll introduce the approach that's being proposed by the GINGR linear methodology, using the analogy of a 4-petal flower that through the application of a 9-step approach can help converge and bring all this information together into an integrated ecosystem services perspective. So thank you all for joining us today. And what I will now do is to summarize this as an agenda, which I've run through here, and hand the floor to Ines. So I will stop sharing and over to you, Ines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gus, and good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to share the baseline project, and I will share my screen. Please let me know if you see it.
We can see it. Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. So this is a project that the main goal is to establish a biodiversity baseline and identifying ecosystem services within the scope of RH biodiversity strategy. So this presentation has four main parts, and the context is integrating biodiversity in the management of grid infrastructure, and which are the main drivers. First of all, an ADP commitment of no net loss, and if it's possible, net gain by 2030. Because for EDP Group, this is aligned with a strategic commitment, and the baseline was developed also in terms of a partnership between the Equator Company and the Center for Ecology, Evolution and Environmental Changes of University of Lisbon. So this is a project that is science-based, and focus on the areas under high and medium voltage power lines managed by a REDS across mainland Portugal. So another driver of this project are the need for it's also an opportunity for the full management strips that have to manage as an opportunity for biodiversity. Okay. So the other driver of this project, is it better, the connection?
Yes, I think it's fine now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the opportunity that to manage biodiversity on our full management strips. This is very important because these strips are legally required to reduce wildfire risk in Portugal and ensure infrastructure safety. However, they can also create opportunities to promote land uses that are compatible with biodiversity, such as agriculture, grasslands, and scrubland habitats. And the third driver is the need for a structured biodiversity baseline for the entire distribution network, because many of these corridors overlap with ecological sensitive areas, and this is essential to understand the biodiversity present along the network. And this lead us to overall structure on the project. The next slide is very simple. We complete this project into two main phases. The first one was the baseline, the biodiversity baseline. In the second one, it was a monitoring network with a tool that I will explain, designing a monitoring network and identify selected areas to do it. So about the study area. We have all our power lines in the mainland Portugal in order to have a practical understanding of the all the data that we collect. We are organizing structured this analysis by these net three subregions, ensuring territorial coherence. And we also define two units of analysis. One is the full management strips that are directly under the power lines, and within for medium voltage it is 60 meters, and for the high voltage the high voltage lines it's 25 meters, and another unit is a buffer of 30 meters surrounding all for the ecological context. Then we collect all the data in order to have this type of mapping under our power lines. Let me just some of data collections that we include in this study. First of all, the land cover classes that includes not only land use but land cover, and all the data of the red books and all the literature review that we collect in this project. Also a compilation of the information of threats, status, and also a list of compiled species was prepared based on all these analysis under the two types of units that I mentioned. One of the key things is what are the species that are compatible with our lines, and we call that compatible occupation land uses. And for these studies, the main classes for that are able to that is classes of covered by agriculture, scrub, and grasslands assumed as a potential compatible land uses for this purpose. For the ecosystem services, we collect some information of the Common International Classification of Ecosystem Services and other references, studies, and frameworks that are identified. And also a very important information is the protected areas, not only for Natura 2000 network, but protected areas that our Conservation Nature Authority have already identified. Here are some general indicators that results from this project, reflecting the characterization of land cover classes, fauna and flora species, and also ecosystem surface and classified areas, and divided by the buffer zone and the management strip class that we organize all the data. So this is a solid basis to informed decisions and also to have some monitoring indicators of biodiversity. Other results are about how we characterize our the land use that we have under and that we have under our distribution network, and we see that agriculture is the main land cover, and then we have the other classes that has like scrubland and grassland with the potential to make some compatible occupation management instead of a vegetation management more conventional. That in terms of implementation, we do it. Also, some results from the classified areas in terms of Nature 2000 and protected areas, and we see that we have 12% of the analyzed buffer lies in the Nature 2000 network. With here are some examples, but also in 5% are in protected areas. In terms of ecosystem services, I highlight that 45% of the full management strip areas is associated with provisioning ecosystem services, but we have also the results for the other ecosystem services. And the last results that are also included in this baseline are the threatened categories by focus on the vulnerable, endangered, and critical endangered species of flora, of birds, reptiles, and that's very complete and integrated information in this also in these topics. The second part is the conservation plan for the monitoring network. So here the main objectives is we start with the baseline assessment, and to design this this monitoring network, we have a tool that is the Markson tool in order to optimize those areas into the areas that has the ecological values present and promote these ecological values in these full management strips. This baseline was also under a field validation aimed to verifying all the results, and if it is at the real in the field, if they are real, what all the study represents. And then we have finally mapping conservation planning that where we monitoring all these areas that are representative of the biodiversity promotion. So the Markson conservation planning is the tool that we using for this work. It was applied, like us said, in 80,000 hectares of under our power lines. And this is an algorithm that was used to support the definition of this monitoring network and select areas that meet conservation objectives and at a minimum cost. And also this analysis is based on defining different scenarios, incorporating penalty variables which influence the selected areas that we achieved. So just to highlight some of the evaluation variables, we have the Nature 2000 habitats and also the land use cover and use, and also some variables that were suggested by environmental NGOs, like micro reserves, critical bird areas, and other information. For the penalization variables, we have the maps of rural fire hazard, urban areas, national road network, and some constraints of our that we identify in terms of exploitation of the distribution network. Here are some the interactions that we have in order to select all the corridors until of the end of this biodiversity monitoring network. And for the last areas that we select, we defined indicators by area that were collected and registered in fact sheets of biodiversity. So for the as I mentioned, there was also a field validation of these areas that in order to have that confidence that all the data is correct. And the validation includes land cover, key species, accessible conditions, and other relevant information. And the data robustness was confirmed, and it was a high agreement between baseline and the field observations. Um, and the last output of this monitoring network was the biodiversity fact sheets, which collect and register the relevant information in terms of indicators, in terms also of management recommendations of biodiversity that are, this is in Portuguese, I'm sorry, that are here in this part of the fact sheet, and also the map, and you see that all this information was resumed in this fact sheet that was produced. So finally, the outputs in or the key project outputs was all the report that summarized the indicators and the mapping of the biodiversity baseline. That is the main output, and then the monitoring network with the field validation and the biodiversity fact sheets that allow us to have the relevant areas with ecological systems and manage these corridors or ecological corridors with management procedures and interventions, and also allow us to have for the landowners mainly type of other management in this full management strips. And
Perfect. Thank you,
I
Ines.
will stop sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking us through all of that. It's a huge amount of information, and very impressive to see what you've done so far. And just for the audience, we will share obviously the slides as well, so that people can have a look at those in more detail afterwards. But very impressive to hear about the work that you've done to complete the baseline and to complete the mapping as well. What I'd now like to do is share the floor with Sophia. So I will stop sharing, and then Sophia, if you can take us through your slides, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Adriana, and Hanika for having me here. Coming to you from a lovely day in northern Portugal, spring day, and hopefully you will already see my screen now.
Yes.
I will be sharing some thoughts of the collaboration that NBI has been having with HEN. So I will be talking on behalf of HEN as well. And thank you also to Ines for already introducing the floor for many concepts and for many approaches that brings us together today. Just a quick overview. So I'll be talking on behalf of NPI and HEN. At NPI, we are a consultancy based in Portugal, and we work with ecology and economy. And we have this characteristic sentence from business as usual to business as natural. And we work with different types of services pertaining nature. Today, I will be focusing on natural capital valuation and the work that we have been doing with HEN, the network of all networks, responsible for the electricity system and gas system in Portugal, mainly a very high voltage system. And just to have an idea, HEN has a national electricity transport network of over 9,000 kilometers, and it's also responsible for the national gas transport network, which has more than 1,000 kilometers. Numbers updated at the end of 2025. What brings us to today is within a broader approach which relates with the development of the strategic plan for natural capital management at HEN. And so this general approach that I will be focusing today has been worked in alignment with the LEAP approach from TNFD, the International TNFD, which in a very summarized way comprises 5 different steps. The first one, it's about scoping, defining the scope of the strategy for the management plan of natural capital at HEN. What are the HEN activities that are potentially material in terms of nature-related dependencies and impacts, and what are the resources, considerations, and allocations that need to be agreed for undertaking the assessment. The second part, which focuses actually on the LEAP approach from TNFD, is the locate part, in which we have already identified the interface with nature, the HEN infrastructure with nature, and this comprises all the dimensions that Ines already mentioned before, from fauna, from flora, from habitats, from protected areas, from understanding ecosystem condition, from understanding which hotspots are within HEN's infrastructures in terms of ecosystem services, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of both, in terms of condition and functioning. And we already developed this remotely using remote data. Many of the data Ines already identified, but also complemented with in situ data, providing quantitative indicators for establishing this baseline. The second step is about evaluating, measuring the scale and the scope, in this case of REN, of the positive impacts that their assets and their natural capital and their infrastructures may have on the community through the provision of ecosystem services. Then this approach is complemented with the assessment part of the opportunities and risks that this natural capital and these ecosystem services, together with REN's management, bring for businesses and for biodiversity, and then concluding with the preparation part. Today, I will not be focusing on the baseline establishment, which has already been done at HEN, but I will be focusing on the evaluation part, bringing here the connection between what Ines mentioned and what Lars is going to introduce after me, and then complemented with Adrian throughout view over these dimensions. So the key challenge that I bring today is to identify and measure the societal benefits that result from REN's positive impacts on natural capital. So REN has a lot of influence on the territory of the infrastructures. They are also within several legal and mandatory actions for the management of their vegetation, but also for the management of other natural resources. And the key challenge here is to understand what goes beyond these mandatory actions that bring additional value as well to the communities and to the society, and how can we actually capture these benefits and these positive impacts that come from these additional actions from REN. And so we tackled this challenge in alignment with four main international standards. One of them already mentioned, the TNFD guidelines associated to the evaluate part of the LEAP approach. The other one, the already very well known natural capital protocol. The other one on CEEA, which Lars will be focusing in more detail at the ecosystem extent level for accounting the ecosystem services and translating these services into economic benefits, and the very recent ISO 404 on the natural capital accounting system, which is actually all of these four standards are quite aligned in their principles and their requirements. And of course, we tackled this challenge considering that REN has its infrastructures spread throughout the national mainland continental Portugal. The approach that we did aligned with all these principles also comprises in general 5 main dimensions. So every approach starts with understanding the purpose of going through this evaluation or through this valuation of positive impacts on ecosystem services and natural capital. What are the main reasons to conduct this natural capital valuation, to attribute a value to the natural capital? In the case of REN is responsible for managing its infrastructures. It is responsible for compliance in terms of mandatory actions, but it also promotes additional impacts with compatible land uses, compatible use of species in their corridors, and other beyond legal requirement activities. Then the approach includes the definition of the scope, the definition of the boundaries of the assessment, which are the interested parties to involve. REN works, has a lot of work and effort with the local communities, with partnerships with different entities from the scientific system to local communities to ONGs to NGOs that could be involved or not on this assessment. What are the value perspective and the type of interactions that this approach to natural capital valuation needs to have? In the case of REN, we are focusing here on the positive benefits, on the type of the positive interactions, positive impact that may come from this activity. Which value chain level are we focusing here? Are we focusing on the direct operations, which is the case, or on a broader spectrum of the value chain? Which level of analysis? Ines showed 2 different levels of analysis. This is also part of the decision. Are we focused on the project level, at the corridor level? Are we focused on another type of level? In the case of REN, we are focusing on the project level. And what is the geographical context and the temporal horizon? We could have all the means and go have this analysis for several decades, and we need to decide which boundaries we take. In our case, it was considered over the most recent years of REN's activity. Then we need to prepare for this assessment. We need to prepare for this approach. We need to define the causal links between the impacts and the ecosystem benefits. This is probably the most challenging part of all this valuation, to actually understand the production function between what an entity does in the territory and what are the consequences and the consequences and the causal loops between what is being done and what it is actually being delivered. Many of us are familiarized with the concept of the ecosystem service cascade, and we know that if we change part of the natural capital or the management that we have on vegetation, on what we have on other parts of natural resources, we'll have direct consequences on other parts of the ecosystem service provision, from ecosystem processes or ecosystem functions to ecosystem services, to the benefits, to the values. So establishing the interconnections between what REN does and what it can actually deliver is possibly the most challenging part of all this process. And defining, not only prepare to define these causal links, but also to understand the pathways throughout these links change and the different options for management and the different scenarios for management, and to finally understand which values are actually being delivered for whom, when, and where. Going from scope preparation, and then we go actually on the step of taking action and measuring all of these steps, all of these changes in ecosystem services caused by REN's actions, measure the benefits that are generated by these services, and very important thing, to recognize the strengths and the limitations that all these measurement approaches have, to obey to the principles of transparency, to the rigor and replicability that all these approaches have. And of course, and then communicate all the data, the models, the uncertainties, the assumptions that are made during an approach to natural capital valuation. A major challenge dealing with REN's natural capital valuation, I'm talking here on the example of REN, but this could be applied to many other entities, is to actually understand the boundaries between what is a positive impact and what is the mitigation or the compensation of a negative impact. All economic activities have impacts, negative or positive, and if we follow the mitigation hierarchy, here I just used precisely a screen from GINGR white paper on roadmap for biodiversity net gain. So thank you for that. And it's very, very nice to have this type of illustrations. So to actually understand the point at which the actions that are being done in natural capital are about reducing impacts, mitigating impacts, or offsetting these impacts towards the tipping point to which those actions are actually delivering a net gain, are having or enhancing biodiversity or natural capital. This is a major challenge. Also because many of the activities that REN does and already applies deal with the environmental impact assessment. So our focus was on the projects and initiatives that actually go beyond these mandatory actions, and that go to deliver and promote the enhancement of natural capital beyond the mitigation and the compensation of other impacts. So for this, we had the opportunity of looking in detail into the different initiatives, into the different projects, to start measuring this real positive value. There are lots of projects and initiatives that REN is doing that actually overcome this line of no net loss and the efforts. But today I bring a simple example on how this approach for natural capital valuation can be applied and delivered.
Sophia, we
yes.
have 1 or 2 more minutes, please, if you can
yes, Gus.
close it out.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. I bring you here the case study from Ermelo Plantation. So this is a compatible land use in one of REN's management sites, which is related with the different commitments from REN and also is related with the biodiversity enhancement part of the mitigation hierarchy. Then we apply the rationale of the theory of change to identify the initial situation, the baseline, or the reference situation associated to this type of projects and actions. We identified the type of action and the impact driver, in this case, the planting of Ermelo orange trees, which are a particular type of orange trees from Arcos Valdevez, which is in northern Portugal. And we identified the results from these actions. So we try to capture as much as we can as quantitative indicators, in this case, the number of orange trees planted and the survival rate. Then we make the connections with the CEEA codification, a categorization of the different positive impacts that these actions may deliver, in this case from agricultural products as final service and climate mitigation or regulation as final service and cultural heritage and history testimony associated to this type of variety of orange trees. We also consider other types of ecosystem services which are intermediary and are included in these final services. Then we identify the benefits that derive from these ecosystem services. A very clear, very simple example, agricultural products code 11 in CEA brings the obtention of agricultural products and the beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries, in this case, local producers. And here is the fun or the interesting part where based on the identification of all these components, we are able to provide evaluation assessments. Not in all cases, such as local and regional identity, we can more immediately or should more immediately provide a translation into economic terms, but at least we can say for other ecosystem services that this value is higher than 0, even though we take certain assumptions and we are able to quantify what REN is being delivering in terms of economic values to the local communities. Gus, I hope I was within the time.
Fantastic. Super interesting. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for sharing the detail on the structured approach that you've taken in approaching this work and also bringing the additional focus on natural capital valuation, which sets us up very, very nicely for the next presentation from Professor Lars. So if I can ask you to share your slides, Lars. Thank you very much, Sophia.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think you can see my screen now. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so, well, thank you for inviting me to give this presentation. I will be talking 10 minutes about ecosystem accounting and how that could potentially be used in support of vegetation management and grid planning, especially in Europe. One slide with a bit of background. So what is the system of environmental economic accounting? It is a system to measure, understand, and report on natural capital, and specifically the ecosystem part of natural capital. So hopefully it should be quite useful also in the context of grid management. And it was developed starting in the 1990s, more or less. It is developed by the statistical community, so all the statistical offices, the national statistical offices in Europe. Eurostat has played a big role. And the system is designed in such a way that it is compatible with the system of national accounts that you see on the left, which provide information on the economy. But they do not capture very well the environment or ecosystems. So the idea is that the SIA is a satellite, is complementary to the system of national account, and that it allows you to measure and understand ecosystems and the benefits that they provide to people in a way that is aligned with this system of national accounts. And the advantages are that you can exchange data between the two systems, and also that you have a standard and a broadly accepted approach to value ecosystems, right? Because there's many different ways of valuation, and to report on things. And in addition, another advantage is that because of the involvement of the national statistical offices, there's always a good depository of data that allows you to also prepare your accounts for other actors in society. So SIA, System of Environmental Economic Accounting, is a little bit different from other statistics that are usually produced by statistical offices because it involves spatial information. A lot of, to understand ecosystems, you need maps, right? You need maps of which ecosystems are, what are the services they provide, and these service provision, for example, that entirely depends upon the location that you are. So it is a system that involves both maps and accounting tables. It's also a system that includes both physical and monetary indicators. So there is the possibility to understand your ecosystems and your ecosystem condition and your ecosystem services in physical units, but also in monetary units. So you can aggregate and you can compare, for example, with economic activities. The ecosystem accounting part of the SIA, because it consists of two parts, but I'm going to focus now in this presentation on ecosystem accounting, was developed since more or less 2010. I was personally involved in that process from the start. Initially, we were quite a small group of people, but in the end, there were hundreds of people involved in coming up with the final version of this. You see that on the bottom right-hand side. It's the 2021 version of ecosystem accounting, and that has also been approved, adopted as a statistical standard. Now, that is actually a very big thing because it means that the statistical offices of all countries in the world have accepted this as a statistical standard that is mature enough to be used to prepare statistics on ecosystems and environmental economics in all countries. And it also means that many countries are actually starting and have started to build and to compile these statistics. What is in the ecosystem accounts? So just as the national accounts, there's different accounts that provide different complementary information. So the first account deals with ecosystem extent. Which type of ecosystems, right? So it's a map of your ecosystem types. It could be a forest, it could be a wetland, but also, of course, which type of forest, which type of wetland. The second account is the ecosystem condition account. So what's the health of ecosystems, the state of ecosystems. The third account is the physical ecosystem services account. Then there's also the monetary ecosystem services account, and there is a monetary asset account, and you can compare it to your bank account. You want to measure what's going in, what's going out. That's the services part. And what's your stock of natural capital? That's the asset part. Then there are several complementary accounts, and one of them is the biodiversity account, where you would measure indicators typically related to species, such as species richness or species abundance, etc. And as mentioned, right, you would map those and you would prepare accounting tables. Now, is this something which is new and untested? No, not at all. There's many countries, over 50, that have already prepared these ecosystem accounts at the national scale. This is an example for the Netherlands. We've got, of course, in the Netherlands, ecosystem condition, ecosystem extent, but this is the ecosystem services account. There is all these services on the left are the services that are included in the account. The resolution of the work is very high, so you would have maps with a resolution of several meters, depending a bit upon the service. So you can zoom in very nicely for local areas to see which ecosystem services are being provided. And of course, there's the provisioning services part, the regulating services, so the processes organized by ecosystems, and the cultural services. Now you see that some of the services are in red, and those services are actually mandatory for reporting all over the EU. So all statistical offices, except for the 3 smallest countries in the EU, they will have to report ecosystem services supply for these 7 red ecosystem services to Eurostat. And the first reporting year is 2024, right? So already in the past. and these services have to be reported early 2027. So that means that a lot of data will become available in all countries of Europe on these specific services. So in addition to the services, there's also 9 condition indicators and ecosystem extents that are mandatory for reporting in the EU. So that is already part of the regulatory framework of the EU. And in support of that process, a handbook has been prepared. So the handbook details how you can measure these services, how you can report, how you map them, and how you can prepare accounting tables. And that handbook, to which I also contributed, that is actually going to be published coming Friday by Eurostat. And it's been 5 years of work actually to prepare that handbook. So it was a really big job, again, involving dozens of people, including representatives of at least 15 countries in that task force that prepared the handbook. Now, to give an example, right, because of course the time is very short for this presentation, this is the value of ecosystems in the Netherlands, expressed as a net present value. You see that tourism and recreation, with this valuation method, they score very high. Amenity service, that's the contribution of ecosystems to house prices, that is also a very significant ecosystem service. And you see that the value of some ecosystems, when expressed in a way that is consistent with national accounting, right, in methodologies that are actually conservative, the value of these of some ecosystems is very high, and the blue areas are the sort of most valuable areas in the Netherlands, above the forest in the center of the country, and the coastal areas, which is where you have a concentration of tourism, but also drinking water production, which is located in specific areas. And the value is of that ecosystem, as it is, right, is up to 800,000 euro per hectare. So 800,000 euro per hectare. So that is actually very high. Now, there's a specific account that deals with biodiversity, and that gives you some further detail on species. And you can, of course, prepare your biodiversity account based on different species, or species richness indicators, or aggregated indicators, such as the Shannon-Wiener index, etc. Here's an example that relates to butterflies. On the picture, you see the one of the 2 endemic species we have in the Netherlands, which is a large copper butterfly in English. In red, you see areas where butterflies are in decline. In blue, you see areas where butterflies populations are stable or increasing. Interestingly enough, there's a very strong overlap with the soil type. And basically, our account shows that in the sandy soils, our butterfly populations are doing quite badly. In other areas, they're not doing so badly. So probably there's something to do with factors such as acidification and eutrophication of soils, to which the sandy soils are more vulnerable. So there's all kind of information that you can get by combining the biodiversity data with the other data in the accounts. So your accounts can be prepared at multiple scales, right? So yes, indeed, national statistical offices will typically prepare these accounts at the national scale. This is one province of the Netherlands, but since the account is so detailed, you can zoom into a municipality or even a local field, right? It means that you could also set up an account focusing only on grid lines and buffer zones of those grid lines, for example. What we're doing more and more is to use satellite data to map ecosystems and the services they provide. And of course, there's really a revolution in the amount of data from satellites that's becoming available. Optical, many different sensors, and radar satellite data and LiDAR data. And you don't have to do all the work yourself anymore, since there's so many providers that make this data open access and open source available to you. So this data, on all kind of indicators that you can readily include in your account. And of course, that means you can also very easily update your account and keep them up to date. Now, in the last year or so, we've been working on some web tools. Here you see this is Le Havre in France. You can see on the right-hand side that the web tool is organized according to the SIA with some additional functionalities and some additional data series. Extend condition services is there. You can zoom in and you can understand your ecosystem services provided for specific areas. And the web tool is not yet fully operational and public, but in principle, it's actually covering the whole of Europe. So you could connect the web tool already to to the grid line even now if you want. And the resolution of this web tool of the data series varies a little bit for different indicators, but typically will be 10, 20, or 30 meters and Europe-wide. So this is my last slide. So yeah, for grid management, there's quite a number of things that you can do following an ecosystem accounting approach. You can monitor and analyze land cover on your grids, of course. You can assess your supply of ecosystem services. You can value ecosystem services following your accounting standards. You can engage in biodiversity accounting. And the good thing is the advantage of using the SIA is the system of environmental economic accounting is that you're using a system which is standardized, which has been developed over the last 15 years with hundreds of experts involved, which is a coherent system which is recognized as an accounting standard. So it is in very much detail. It has prescribed how you should measure things, how you should report on things. And it's still flexible, right? But the definitions of the concepts, those are fixed. It's flexible in terms of, okay, you can choose which indicators you want to report on. The good news is also, or the advantage is also that the system, all countries in Europe, except, as I said, the 3 smallest ones, will have to start using the SIA, have to start reporting on it. So there's the possibility to exchange data or maybe even contribute to national level reporting on ecosystem accounts. But in any case, to use data from statistical offices, including spatial data, already to prepare baselines. But in addition to statistical offices, there's also several European data sources and also the viewer that I just showed that are also already giving you a lot of baseline information that you can use to prepare accounts for any area in Europe, including the grid lines. And that was my last slide. So thank you very much. And I think
Lars, thank you very much. I think that was extremely interesting. Countries, of course, will be at different stages of maturity in terms of this process, but I think there's really no excuse for any of them not to begin to follow this approach and to make more detailed information available. I think what's also particularly interesting is the link to national accounts, and we will return, I think, in our next presentation and discussion a bit more about how it links to other actors who in many cases, of course, have not really taken this into account in their planning and their business cases with excuses that it's not possible. But I think increasingly there's no reason why it should not be. So thank you again for that. We return to our final speaker, Adrian, who will provide an update on the linear working group progress to date. Adrian, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, sorry, I thought I was on mute. Okay, thank you, Gus. Thank you, Ines and Sofia. I hope you can see my screen.
Not yet, Adrian. No, so if you can pull that up, that would be great.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah, can you? Okay, cool. So today we decided to place this order of speakers. So it has a reason, and the reason is because we wanted to share with you how GINGR has been evolving throughout this time, and why we think we should have followed this path of reasoning. So first of all, before we speak about the methodology, which is comprised of two sets of information. One is what we call it the flowers of the petals. The petals of the layers, which are four petals, and the second one is the number of steps we need to run through. Before we do so, we would like to give you an overview of a recent webinar, which was done on March 2026 by GINGR. You have a QR code there if you want to know more, which is describing the current state of environmental reporting for the renewable energy sector. And although the message is that the companies are, trying to report biodiversity considerations as much as possible, there is still some poor coverage in the reporting frameworks when it comes to species extinction, invasive species, and also how nature contributes to people, which is why we are talking here today. On top, we also see some other challenges, despite that these companies are aligning to voluntary frameworks, such as the TNFD, as we saw earlier from Sofia, and the famous CSRD, which we have been going back and forth for a few years now. And these challenges are, first, the baselines are inconsistent. There are fragmented data collection systems. There is a lack of automation, and also there is a lot of confusion around metrics. And this is coming into something which is very critical, because we will need to, like, as Professor Lars said, we need to put all this data in a spatial format so it can be translated, it can be understood by decision makers, by regulators, by managers, and so on. So what do we want to do at GINGR? We would like to address these two gaps, these two reporting gaps, that first, the comparison of benefits and impacts is not so easily done, and then that the regulators are struggling to price biodiversity, which means that if we do so, we would then be able to perhaps reduce the permitting time, also improve the number of approvals, and also align ourselves to all the existing frameworks that are out there, and speak the language of the regulator, basically. So the CIA framework, it's, to me, one of the critical, most easy, straightforward way to quantify nature positive outcomes, and this will also allow, within the grid context, to integrate this into the decision making frameworks as to how can TSO be how can a government incentivize a TSO to do better in terms of their capex and opex model, capital expenditure or operational expenditure. When it comes to the methodology itself, we start from what other speakers already said. So the ecosystem condition, the quality of the ecosystem, and where is this ecosystem based? So what's the area? And we're looking at things such as the soil and the water, abiotic. We are looking at plants and animals, reptiles, amphibians, pollinators, and so on. So that's the biotics part of it. And we are looking at things such as species diversity and species richness, which is in connection to how rare or replaceable an ecosystem can be, and obviously in the whole landscape. So this is the spatial side of things that we need to capture from both ground verifications and service. And this is the famous 4 petals, which I have represented in layers for this presentation today. So we have 4 of them, and the first one is petal 1, which is represented there as landscape and territorial baseline assessment. So we use spatial data, different tools to capture as much as information we can, and we can do this in both in a spatial and temporal line, so throughout the life cycle of the asset, so lifespan of the asset, sorry. And this first petal captures can go from 100 kilometers to a very narrow 30-meter range, as we have seen from Redes before. The second one is that we cannot trust everything that we see from space, so we have to go into the field and do some sort of service, and use different equipments and calibrate them, and especially agree between all of us on how we do this field testing, because there are different methodologies in different countries and different practices and so on. And then the third one is the third and the fourth are the petals that are capturing also what's happening on the people's side. So cultural values and meanings, petal 3 is capturing things such as cultural ecosystem services, recreation, aesthetics, sense of place, psychological value. How can we measure these things? It's complex, but it can be done. And there are ways that we can use. We can use also species as proxies to capture how people feel and react. And we can also learn from them, by interviewing these people, using different techniques such as the Q methodology, and using these methodologies to then georeference them back to a spatial format such as the participatory GIS system. So we can we can use symbolic species to learn, and also to learn on how can we plan grids better, how can we mitigate the impact on a certain community, for instance. And then, therefore, we can integrate their knowledge in the form of nature-based solutions or any other form into the route planning. And at last, in the fourth petal, is the social and vulnerability and environmental justice, which is complex here. And we can also, we have to be careful on how we plan grids so they are even to the society, and we are caring for the most vulnerable people, and can use a lot of existing spatial indicators and data to also integrate and overlay with the other layers. Also, I'm thinking of perhaps adding a fifth petal, and perhaps this is a question to the room, shall we? Which is the climate data, the projections, the scenarios, because scenarios are going to impact the biodiversity and the communities. And then all of these 4 or 5 petals, we will see, they are integrated within the ecosystem services accounting, in this case, for this lecture, for this webinar, which is throughout the CIF framework. And the CIF framework allows us to understand the impacts, but also to value the benefits, as the case for the orange trees that have won, by the way. Thanks for Ren. And then this is the number of the steps. So you see in the outer side, you have the strategic environmental assessment. So the first step is to, in a similar way, mimic what Redes did. So first you conduct a landscape and territorial baseline assessment. Then you go into step number 2, which is estimate your potential impact on areas. Then you go into number 3, which is apply the best route or the preferred route. So you have different routes in grid planning, route A, B, or C. You may choose number C according to the information you have been capturing in the field and in the throughout surveys and interviews, but also from spatial data. So in these 3 steps, we are talking about strategic environmental assessment. This can be useful for governments, but can also be useful for larger TSOs, and then especially the petals 1, 2, and 3 and 4 are mostly connected in these 3 steps. Into the 4th step is the comprehensive baseline service. We have to do here both social and environmental baseline service. Usually surveys have been biased towards birds. So right now we are trying also to understand and homogenize and standardize the way TSOs capture these field data. So we have also people in our group, members in our group, that would like to talk to TSOs and understand how this approach is being done. Same for the landscape assessment. And then once all these 4 steps are done, we have to go into the quantification of the impacts and the mitigation measures. And then we would then be able to go and design our monitoring framework that we would apply throughout the whole project life cycle, that we also recommend to engage with the stakeholders in the previous steps. So these interviews that we had at the beginning are going to be supportive, informative for the series of steps 5, 6, and 7, which would be then the ones using the nature-based solutions, the local knowledge to adapt grids to provide services to the community, such as the example of Redes, or the example of Ren with the horses, with the Garano horses, or with the examples of IBM in general. At the end, steps 8 and 9 are the outcomes of this exercise, of this implementation practice throughout the measurement of ecosystem services, which are the integrator. And this would be translated using a language that allows regulators to catch all this information. So then they can be used, then these regulators can understand how externalities affect the routing, and that would be the logic to apply in systems such as the TOTEX, which is the total expenditure that captures both the operational expenses and the capital expenses of building a grid. And I think I have pretty much summarized everything into this some sort of diagram, where we have here, using also the CIF framework and the net present value, for this is an example, hypothetical example of how would a power line corridor would look like as if they had just conventional management, and how these three ecosystem services would get impacted, and what happens if we then use IVM, Integrated Vegetation Management, and by applying this, let's say, best practice or technique, then we can reduce the amount of losses or impacts, or we can even talk about net gain, maybe, hopefully, in some particular examples. And I think this is my last slide. So I think it's, I would like to thank everyone. I would like to thank Redes, and I would like to thank also Ines, both of them. I'd like to thank also Sofia and David from REN. I also like to thank Professor Lars for jumping in so quickly into this webinar, and also obviously to my team. And over to you, Gus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Really useful to see how the work that GINGR's doing is trying to pull all of this really good thinking and progress together into something that is very practically aimed at supporting companies with their projects going forward. I can also see that during the last presentation, we've had some very excited questions and answers being traded, and thank you very much to the presenters already for stepping in to answer a number of those. Good to see the level of interest and the details being asked. I had a few questions which I was going to direct at the individual presenters, but I think it might be more useful maybe if we open it up to the floor and just allow a little bit more exploration of some of the questions that have been asked so far, to see if there's some other more practical details that we can cover off. And maybe I could start with Diego. You've asked a couple of questions, particularly in relation to the work being carried out in Portugal. If you can show your face on the camera, and then if you have an additional question you'd like to put to the presenter team, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Yes, my question was about the use of Marksan, the tool Marksan. I understand that it was used to identify biodiversity sample sites that are a sample of biodiversity across the whole area of study. And I understand that those sites will be then monitored over time. I just wanted to check if I'm right with this assumption. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Ines, I think that's over to you.
Yes. The Marksan was to select the areas, the main goal, because it is based on the ecological values that those areas could have, and in order to identify other types of management in these corridors. Because in Portugal we have to have an aggressive vegetation management in terms of wildfire risk, as I mentioned, and the legislation is a little bit it's not selective in terms of areas, so we have to do it in all the country, in the forest areas and also in some rural areas that could be with other type of land use. So the main goal is select the areas, identify those areas with ecological values, and then promote a possible management by the landowners also, because they could have other opportunities to seize this type of land and seize these corridors into an integrated management of this land, and not be just a corridor to have a line. So this is also an opportunity for them, and
Yeah.
That's why we promote and use the Marxan.
No, that's great. It'd be very interesting to continue to hear how that works for you, and as you build up the data. Laura, you had asked a question way at the beginning. I just wanted to check if there was anything else that you might want to raise with the presenters.
Hello. No, thank you. I think that Lars Hein already answered me, so
Okay.
I'm fine.
No,
Thank
that's fine. That's fine. If I could bring Jason in. Jason, I saw a couple of questions from you as well. I know we've had some discussions in parallel. Is there anything else that you'd like to put to the presenters today?
No, thanks, Gus. I mean, I have a lot of experience using SEAA, and I agree it's a very powerful tool. I think some of my questions was getting a little bit updated on how it's being used. I think what's going to be interesting to dig into, and maybe this is a question back to the presenters, is how do you marry frameworks like that provide very useful ways to calculate the benefit with the need to get more site specific data incorporated. There was a little bit about it, in terms of how you did some field level validation of some of the data. I guess I'm curious in a bit more detail. What were your data challenges? What did you find that you could get, say, from satellite data that was available maybe freely in conjunction with things like SEA? Where did you find the field data was most important, and what were the mechanisms through which you got that level of confidence? So that was mostly the set of questions I had.
Okay, no, that's great. Any of the presenters want to jump in on any of those points?
Yeah, I could make a start maybe, because I think that's an excellent question. Thank you so much, Jason, for posing that. So indeed, right. So when you now want to apply the SIA at a more local scale, what to do? Well, I think you start first with looking at what's already out there in the SIA accounts published nationally or maybe at EU scale, and see, okay, is that accurate enough? Is the resolution high enough for what we need? And that may be the case for some data series. It may not be the case for other data series. Hopefully, the publisher of the data will have indicated the accuracy. Otherwise, you would need some technical expertise or technical backup in order to assess the quality of the data. And then, of course, the next step is to say, look, is this everything we need, or what are the data gaps? What are the additional indicators that we want to measure that are important for us, for our questions, for related to managing our ecosystems, or other policy questions that we have, and from there select the ones that you want to measure and see how that could be done. In general, I have to say it is quite amazing to realize how much data is out there already, at which quality and at what resolution. So there is really a lot. So really my advice would be to first check everything that's available, and from there see what are the data gaps and how can that be filled in with targeted analysis. And again, using satellite, of course, wherever possible is a good way forward, because there's so much free satellite data available. Satellite data is updated regularly. So if as much as you can, use the satellite data, and obviously try to minimize your ground truth data. But for some data series you will need. And of course the most tricky one is usually the biodiversity. I liked the work that with Maxan. I think that's a good way forward to do that in an efficient way. But then the other speakers can probably inform more about it.
Great, thank you, Lars. Adrian, do you want to add to that answer, or do you have something else you wanted to raise?
Yeah, well, I would like to. I agree with Professor Lars, but I would also like to ask everyone in this room on the biodiversity metrics that can capture these impacts on the specific metrics, and how could we agree to use some of those that we are already doing at GINGR. So we would then be able to upload these metrics into in a spatial context in a GIS system. And I'm thinking about metrics that can capture the threats, the pressure response benefit framework that is out there. So we can also align our language to initiatives such as the nature positive initiatives and so on. But mostly important, how can we use these existing metrics or equivalent metrics and agree to use them all together? And that would be the question.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think we may not have time to really dig into that in huge amounts of detail today, but maybe we leave that with the participants and we follow up bilaterally on that. We're slowly running out of time. We also I saw your hand up as well, Sophia. Please.
Yeah, because it's just to add, I completely agree with Lars, and also like the challenge that Adrian just raised on finding the consensus on biodiversity metrics and other metrics. And I just would reinforce response to Jason that CEA is not a tool. Well, it can be a tool, but it's not a method. It's a system of guidelines, of principles. It helps constructing the accounts. So there are lots of tools out there. There's a lots of databases and data sources that can be used for the specific context with valuation is taking place. There's also, as Lars was mentioning, there are different types of accounts, ecosystem accounts, monetary accounts. They can be quantitative, they can be qualitative. It depends on the metrics. None of these standards, even ISO 14054, does not prescribe any metric or indicator or any tool or specific methodology. It gives you the guidelines to actually have rigorous, robust, transparent, and clear approaches to tackle all this. So I just want to refer this because there's also in the chat, you can have, there were questions about annual updates, 3-year updates on the accounts. It actually depends on the effort that the entity can do it. And it can be an account at the national level for governments, or can be quite different for an account at the company level or at the municipality level. So these are all boundaries that need to be established at the scoping phase of the valuation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Lars, a final quick intervention. We're running out of time.
Very, very quickly. I also need to leave at 16:30 sharp, actually. So Sophia, you're right. The SIA documents themselves, they are not specific in terms of which indicators to use, but the European Handbook on Ecosystem Accounting, 300 pages, to be published Friday, does give you, for 9 condition indicators, 7 service indicators, exactly the metrics that you would need to report in Europe. So I would encourage people that are following the SIA to tune in on Friday or next week and have a quick look at that handbook. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Lars. Right, I need to bring it to a close. There will be a poll coming up in a minute or two from Annika, so please contribute to that. It would be great to have your thoughts to take into account as we move forward. If we look at what else RGI and GINGR has been up to, a lot of it can be found on our website. Here's a few examples of some of the white papers and international engagement that we've had as a team, and we've got a busy plan coming up as well for the next couple of months as we look ahead at 2026. The final step for me really is to say 2 thank yous. First of all, to all of our presenters. I think really fascinating discussions. Great to go into the details of what each of them has been involved with. Great to see the progress on all of this. And I'm very encouraged by attempts to try and bring this together, particularly through GINGR and also some of the big international initiatives. So thank you again to all our presenters. And of course, thank you to the audience for sticking with us for an hour and a half. We will have more webinars. So keep in touch, and if you'd like to know more about GINGR or get involved, then feel free to reach out. But thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.